The Wisconsin Badgers are going back to power football, and Amari Latimer is going to help that happen.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet comes out a winner. The Wisconsin Badgers got a really good running back recruit committed here recently for the class of 2026. I'm going to talk about why that's so important, where he's from, the whole aspect of how Wisconsin's recruiting, and that leads right into the discussion, the offense. Wisconsin needs a major upgrade. They changed the coordinator position. They got a lot of stuff going on. Luke Fickell, is he on the hot seat? What do they got to do? And then we're going to talk a little bit about the quarterback play and overall the Big Ten. What's happening with the Badgers within a league that is getting really big and getting really, really talented. To help me figure all of that out, how we doing, Christian?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. Introduce yourself. First time I've had you on the channel, but you're a guy that is diehard Wisconsin, and you like to cover the Badgers. Tell everybody about yourself.
Absolutely. So from Wisconsin, born and raised, grew up watching Badgers. Really got hooked on them in the Ron Dane years. Definitely when they were kind of at the height of their like at the beginning of everything, you know. So, I mean, this is a little uncharted territory for me ever since I've been, watching the Badgers. Have had a really solid football program, so I've been kind of hooked on them, and then just always kind of had a passion talking about it. So started writing about it wherever I could. Badger of Honor on Fansided. Started there for a while, and then hooked up with Dylan Graff, who writes for Badger Notes. So anyone who reads about the Badgers and stuff all the time, I'm sure they've come across Badger Notes.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of led on to Athlon, where I am right now, writing a little bit for that, and then just kind of a little passion project of mine. I kind of want to just split up. So now I just started a site called Badger Backer. So anything I can think about, just complete opinion, news, just all my thoughts on the Badgers. So I thought it's kind of fun to do, and just talk with anyone who wants to talk to me about the Badgers.
There you go, brother. Well, that's what we're here for. It's a lot of fun because we're right on the cusp of fall camp. Recruiting is obviously ramped up, and that's what I want to start with now. Amari Latimer from Sandy Creek High School, just south of Atlanta, one of the best running backs in the class of 2026. He's a kid that would fit into the traditional, just dominant athlete at running back. And the Badgers, Dane, I remember him. He was a national recruit, USA All-American. Every school in the country recruited him. He surprised everybody. He went to Wisconsin, became a dominant player, goes to the NFL and the whole nine. Latimer's a little different. He's a speed guy. He's faster than what Dane was at this point, but he's not little either. He's over 200 pounds, can catch, he can block. How excited were you, and what do you think Badger fans thought when they got a guy out of the Deep South that had offers, ACC, Big Ten, SEC? Were they as pumped up as I think they were? What was the reaction?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is something like, after a while, you kind of start thinking, I got 24/7 Sports, they got their crystal balls. Like people kind of had an idea, but just when they first started kind of hearing about him and stuff, and how, everyone talked about him, like especially all the national writers and stuff, about how highly recruited he was. You see his offer list had almost 50 Division I teams. So like when the Badgers got him, that was crazy. All over social media, everyone was pumped. They're freaking out. It's not the kind of back you get every year, or just easily.
Yeah, I think he's a kid that could play early in the SEC or the Big Ten. I don't really care which school he went to. By his sophomore year, I think he would be a guy that would be garnering major minutes. And the main reason for that isn't the God-given talent. It's the all-around skill set combined with it. He'll catch, he'll block, he'll run. He could be a special teams guy for you. And above all else, which this certainly fits Wisconsin historically, He's a between the tackles thumper, but he can also score. If the safety misses his run fit or something, it's a track beat. And he's not going to lose many of those either.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin just switched up their offense. So let's talk about that. Are we going to see more I formation or at least one back, like inside zone and some of that kind of stuff again? Is it going to be a little more traditional Wisconsin moving forward? I think Latimer would fit that pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're definitely going to see more than you did. The problem is when you make that switch, you don't necessarily have a fullback on the roster. So I know like Jackson Aker, they've kind of moved from running back to tight end, and now he's kind of in that H-back role, kind of doing that kind of stuff. But I think you're definitely going to see a lot more power run, a lot more of the inside zone stuff than obviously you did with the air raid when Longo was here. So I think where Fickell was really adamant about getting back to like that identity of like smash mouth football, about just, the running game being a really strong point for the offense rather than depending on, throwing it through the air or everything being a read option, like from shotgun, which I know drove Wisconsin fans mad. I don't know how many times they went for it on 4th and 1 last year from the shotgun, but that was always a really hot button topic on social media. So I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of that anymore.
Well, I know that Wisconsin fans weren't happy with the offense in general, and that was certainly a major point of emphasis. Short yardage didn't go well. The passing game, even though like Benny Anthony and a few of the guys they had pretty good, but the inconsistency with getting the football to playmakers in space, well documented. I think that the key is getting back to the run game, at least some. They don't have to go back full on 1998, but they need to be more effective with the run game to set up play action. Guys like Benny can really run, but they're getting so much attention. It's hard because they didn't run the ball as well as they should. And then the passing game just looked anemic from the outset. I think they'll be better with this, with their personnel. I don't think it'll take more than a year or so to adjust because they've always got good linemen, and the mentality of the kids that they go after just fits smash mouth football. So we'll see how it goes with that. Before we hit the break, my question to you is, how much of a jump do you think Wisconsin takes this season offensively? We're talking another 5 points a game, another 10. Do you think they'll be viable? I mean, their schedule is crazy. We're going to talk about that a little bit here in just a second. You got Oregon, they got Bama, they got Ohio State, Michigan. The scheduling gods did not smile upon the Badgers. So is it feasible against that schedule to really see much more production, or is this going to be a transition year?
See, I think in any other year, I think you would definitely see some progress. I think it fits what they do better. But like you said, with that schedule, I think it's gonna be kind of hard to see like any sort of substantial progress between the two offenses. I think it'll look better. I think they're not gonna be in quite so many 3rd and longs, because they'll be running the ball a little more to get closer. I think they'll set themselves up a lot better than they have in the past. So I think the optics of it will look better. I think they're still going to struggle based on who they play because, like you said, that is an absolutely brutal schedule. But I think, like you said, this year might be a little rough going. I mean, they're learning. Maybe they don't have all the exact personnel they want to fit it, but I think 2 years down the road, I think they'll definitely be far and away better than they were the last couple of years with Longo and with the air raid.
That's kind of where I'm at too. If you have the ability to run the ball, and again, it's a little easier for Wisconsin to get the linemen that state, Chicago, Detroit. They're gonna get some pretty good linemen from that area. I think it's the better fit for them in a long-term situation, especially until they get Carter Smith or somebody else. Maybe it's Danny O'Neill. Somebody else kind of takes over, and they can get a guy that can start for more than 1 year and not just a portal quarterback.
Yeah,
that's my guess. So we're going to talk about that crazy schedule for the Badgers when we come back because it is daunting. That's next here on the Portal Podcast. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action? Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in the game while your friends are out getting sunburned at the beach. If you want to go to any of the big baseball games coming up, maybe even the All-Star game, check out some of that. There's a lot of ways you can have fun with it. But I'm telling you right now, we're to the point in the year when really good starting pitchers, they're the key if you're going to do anything with the baseball action. The guys, they get their arms a little bit tired. The teams that are going to win are the ones that have more depth. They're going to be the teams that also have that power pitcher that can blow it by guys. That's what I'm going to be looking forward to. You'll probably even see it at the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, which is coming up here pretty quick. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. All right, Christian, we hinted at it before the break. Besides the Alabama game early, which is on the road, which game you sit there and you look at, whether it's the timing, whether it's the history with the school, which one are you like, man, this is just an awkward spot? Because I got bogged down looking at it a day or two ago. And I was like, what in the world is this schedule? Because they got Oregon, they got Ohio State, Michigan, Washington, Iowa. Like, goodness gracious. There is no easy game after like week 3. There's a couple of easier games besides Bama early. But then once you get in the Big Ten, there's no game. There's no Purdue on the schedule, correct?
Nope. No Purdue, no Rutgers, no Northwestern this year. No, I was actually looking at the other day too, and I realized there wasn't any Nebraska, which was kind of surprising considering the rivalry they've had. But I was looking at it the other day too, and I don't know. There is especially so they got the first 2, Miami of Ohio and Middle Tennessee should win both those, but then they have to go down to Alabama, just kind of like last year. Went 2-0, faced Bama 2-1. And then right after that, they got Maryland at home. Should be winnable. But then they got this gauntlet of at Michigan, home versus Iowa, home versus Ohio State, and then at Oregon. So just that 4-game run right there. And I don't think there's not even a bye week or anything in there. That's just the entire month of October is just going to be absolutely brutal for the Badgers. So not really looking forward to that. But I'm thinking maybe they get a win against Washington at home. Then they got a chance to kind of prove some stuff at Indiana. Let's see if Indiana's all that cracked up they are, or as cracked up as they are to be. But one of the games I'm looking most forward to, I think, is the home game versus Illinois. There's kind of a little bit of a rivalry brewing there, especially with Bielema being there now.
Sure.
And then a couple years ago, they flipped one of our recruits, and they were kind of celebrating over, the coaches were all celebrating about it on social media and stuff. So I think that caught the coaches at Wisconsin's eye a little bit. So I think there's definitely a little bit of a rivalry going there. And then, of course, as always, we finished the year at Minnesota. So I think there's nothing easy about the schedule.
Luke Fickell, we'll transition now and just get it over with. He's kind of on the hot seat. There's no friendly way to say it.
No.
They're not going to accept the way last year went. And like Ryan Herring's a buddy of mine who runs Locked On Badgers. And I talked to him about this schedule earlier this year. I'm like, I think they're a 5-7 team. And FanDuel, for the record, 5.5 wins is the over-under total. And I think that's a pretty fair barometer. Between 5.5 and 6.5 is where I'd have it to, somewhere in that vicinity. But you got transfer quarterback again. You're switching offenses. You still got Vinny out there, running back, maybe pretty good. I'm not positive, but they got some young talent. We can talk about that a little bit before they get the stud we talked about earlier, Amari Latimer, coming in. I think he'll play pretty early. But defensively is probably my bigger concern, to be honest, because when you play that schedule, like Ohio State and Michigan, all these teams, they bring linemen. What do you think the depth is for the Wisconsin front 7? I'm just worried teams are going to run counter tray, gap, basic play, especially the back 4 or 5 games. Like you said, after October, they're going to be beat up. Yep. It's going to be hard. Like Minnesota is going to run about 6 different plays in that game, and then maybe a couple of trick plays and maybe a couple of bombs. But they're just going to try to run over you. But the schedule Wisconsin's got, I get it. So what do you think about the front seven for the defense, and can it help the offense? Like, what do you think is going to go on there?
I'm hoping so. You can tell the staff really attacked their front seven through the portal this year. They brought in Corey Walker from, I think it was Western Michigan, I believe. Parker Peterson from Tulane. They brought in Charles Perkins, Michael Garner, JVR Suggs from LSU. So, I mean, it's definitely a position that they've attacked because they got gashed last year on the ground. They couldn't stop anything. So I think they kind of looked at that, and I think they realized they had a huge problem. So they definitely attacked that. And then they also went and grabbed a few linebackers too. Mason Rieger from LSU, and also Tyrese Fearbury. I think that's his name. And then Antaron Turner too. So they definitely spent a lot of resources, a lot of time recruiting the front seven in the portal this year. So I think, kind of going along with what you're saying, I think they probably looked at they look at their schedule and they got just the Big Ten in general too. It's big boy football, there's a lot of running, they're going to bang you up. So I think by the time they get to maybe the easier part of their schedule after October, like Washington, Indiana, Illinois, they're going to be pretty beat up, I think. So I think they're definitely going to test the depth of their front seven and everything. We'll kind of see how they do, but they've definitely loaded up there since last season.
Yeah, they had to. Like Illinois, I think's got an outside chance of making the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that they got a quarterback that's returning. They got obviously Bielema can coach. If that's one of your middle of the pack games on your schedule, good luck. Yeah. I mean, Indiana just went 11-2. Their only two losses were to Ohio State and Notre Dame, who just played the national title game. I know they lost quite a few guys, but they got both receivers back. They got a good transfer quarterback. That's going to be a tough game, and it's in Bloomington, if I remember right. That's not helpful either.
Yep.
Who's the player or players that have to take major steps forward? I mean, obviously Billy at quarterback, but leave him out of. Give me a couple of guys. They got to take a major step forward for the Badgers to go to a bowl game this year.
Well, I think a big part of it is whoever's going to be playing left tackle. Kevin Haywood, big time recruit coming in, was supposed to step in and be the left tackle after Jack Nelson left. Has had a season-ending knee injury in spring ball, so I think they got to figure out who's going to be there. It might be Leighton Nelson, who came in from Vanderbilt a couple years ago. I think whoever is at left tackle is going to have to really step up and make sure they're doing their job. So as Billy Edwards is going to be on the run a lot. Otherwise, I think inside linebackers, I'm really looking at Christian Aliagro and Tackett Curtis. I think they're definitely both going to have to step up too. And I'm assuming Nazir Forkarine, assuming he wins his whole appeal and everything, and he's back for another year, him and Ricardo Hallman will do just fine on the boundary as corners. But I think Austin Brown is the other big guy that's going to have to step up with Hunter Wohler leaving. Him and Preston Zachman, that's who it is. So honestly, a lot of defenders are really going to have to step up, I think, just because Hunter Wohler leaves a huge, huge hole in your defense.
Oh, yeah, that was a really good football player. So, and he was a guy everybody rallied around too. So
absolutely.
That's important. Well, let me ask you this: with Fickell in this situation, if he wins 6 games this year, they go to a bowl game. Is that enough, or is it going to be really tough? I mean, I don't know where his contract stands. It's probably a lot of money they would still owe. Is that enough, or is he going to be on the hot seat? What do you think?
I think he's got another year at least before he's truly on the hot seat. I think the AD Chris McIntosh really put a lot on the line. Like when he got hired, this was his guy. He went all out to get Fickell, which was a huge hire at the time. I think he's definitely going to be, Fickell has a lot of rope. And I think Longo, things got kind of pinned on him a little bit the last couple of years. So by firing him, maybe bought himself some more time too. But then also a lot of the guys Fickell's brought in, he's had some good recruiting classes the last couple of years, and a lot of them really haven't had a chance to play. They haven't hit the field a whole lot yet. So I think still kind of waiting to see what his guys do. I think this year you're really going to start seeing them. And then obviously next year too, those are going to be the years you're going to see a lot of his players. So I think if this year doesn't go well, I think they'll take into account, the schedule too. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of teams out there that would do real well with this schedule. So I think he's got this year again, and then into next year. And if next year doesn't go well, I think it's going to be a different story. I think you're going to be talking about the hot seat for him then, definitely.
I would agree with that. This year, if he can get 6-6, I think he can survive. If he goes less than 6-6, that's another story. When we come back, I want to talk about the Big Ten, the expectations for the league, possible expansion. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. All right, it is time to talk about the brutal nature of the Big Ten, adding Southern Cal, Washington, Oregon, UCLA. Even UCLA is recruiting well. I mean, they just got 4 kids out of Florida. So the league is just continuing to get better. Where do you think Wisconsin is in terms of their roster? Like, is it even in the top half of the league? I tend to think it's not. Like, what do they got to improve the most to get into that level where they could be like one of the best 8? Let's just leave it at 8. What positions are they needing the most talent to take that step? Because the league is darn good from top to bottom.
Yeah, I think, to answer your first question, no, I don't think they're probably talent-wise the top half of the conference. It's getting pretty hard to compete out there. It's becoming an SEC and Big Ten. That's all. Those are the 2 big conferences, and that's about it. But I honestly think defensive line, they absolutely have to get better at recruiting those kinds of guys, especially with how the Big Ten, runs the football, as physical as they are. If they keep kind of striking out on some of the guys they're trying to get, and just depending on transfer portal guys coming in from FCS and D2 schools, they're going to be in trouble. Otherwise, keep going after like defensive backs too, and trying to Xavier Lucas was a huge recruiting win last year before he left, and Wisconsin fans all know exactly what happened there. And I'm sure that's national news now with Wisconsin suing Miami and everything. But that, and just honestly skill players, they're starting to get better. They landed a really big recruit, the wide receiver Jaden Petit. That was a huge get. They need to do more things like that. They need to get more players like that, more players like Latimer, more players like just their quarterbacks. It's like the positions that really, really matter. Those are the ones they really need to upgrade. They can't just depend on, I know recruiting rankings aren't everything, right? But they can't just depend on 3-star guys all the time and working on developing them, especially with NIL and transfer portal the way it is these days. The days of just constantly having to bring guys up, coach them up, develop them. It's kind of over. So you got to get guys that are almost ready to go from the get-go,
I could not agree more. I've been told that their NIL game is not up to snuff yet. And I don't know, I'm not in those meeting rooms, but some of the numbers, I live down south, some of the numbers for D linemen and stuff, they're just not going to be, kids are making over 7 figures.
And that's definitely not what Wisconsin's doing.
So how do you overcome that when your biggest problem potentially is D line? How do you overcome that? It's not a hotbed state for D line.
No,
it's not a great area in general. They just lost a key D lineman to Ole Miss that flipped from Wisconsin, a kid from Chicago. That was a really good player. How do they overcome that? Are they going to have to just use the portal every year? And that's an expensive adventure, by the way. What's the answer?
I think you're going to have to, either that or just get lucky. Because like you said, the Midwest, especially Wisconsin, isn't necessarily a hotbed for defensive linemen. We have offensive linemen. And then there's kids down in Chicago, but they're, a lot of them end up going to Notre Dame or Michigan or, Ohio State that's just as close as Wisconsin is. So I think just getting lucky, honestly. Maybe you get a guy that's a flash in the pan and, is a lot better, or you get a guy like Nicholas Clayton from down in Florida. That was a great player they get. That was good about. I was he's from Gainesville. And the Gators didn't take him. I laughed because I thought they should. But that was good. They absolutely got lucky with that. And I think I just read the other day that one of the big reasons he picked Wisconsin over everywhere else is the academics, So but a lot of kids aren't like that. They're not necessarily. Yes, they look at academics, but nowadays, it's necessarily I don't want to say they're just chasing paychecks, because that's maybe not what it is, but like NIL plays into it, or, who's going to get me into the league, and Wisconsin, especially with defensive linemen outside of like JJ Watt and stuff, it's not necessarily what they're known for. So, especially when you got teams like Ohio State and Michigan and Notre Dame come calling, it's usually game over by then.
That's the key. They got to develop a couple of guys that were the 3 stars, and they've got to hit the home run. Now, they've done it before. Mm-hmm. JJ Watt was nobody, so it can happen. But, I mean, asking for another JJ Watt, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. That might be a little bit over the top. He's one of my all-time favorite players to watch. Mm-hmm. He's a pretty good guy. But they've got to figure that out. And I think they also need to add – they've got to get at least one guy that is a dude at corner, where other teams got to know where he's at. Mm-hmm. Because right now, I think they've got some good players at DB, but they don't have anybody that an elite team like Ohio State or Michigan or Washington, Oregon, teams that throw the ball around, they don't have anybody they fear, in my opinion. Again, I'm not saying they're not good, but there's a difference. If you got a 1st or 2nd round pick at corner, it changes play calls on every down. So that's really important. Well, Christian, I appreciate you coming on the show today, man. It's been a lot of fun. Tell everybody where they can find your work and what you got going on.
Absolutely. You can find my work at at badgerbacker.com. Anything Wisconsin football, basketball, recruiting, anything like that, I try to get on. Otherwise, you can find some of my work at All Badgers on the Athlon as well. So
appreciate it, sir. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Podbean, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you go. Thank you very much. We'll see you again soon here on the Portal Podcast.